All right, so today we're diving into Prophet Song by Paul Lynch.
Ooh, this one's really something special.
Yeah, I was a little hesitant at first. I mean, another dystopian novel,
Right.
right? But
You know what? I thought the same thing. I mean, how many times can we revisit this genre? But
but this one, it's different, I think. And we should say right off the bat, we're not going to spoil anything. We're just going to try and give you a taste of what makes this book so different.
yeah, and hopefully get you interested in picking it up yourself because the critics are raving about it.
Yeah, they are.
I'm like really raving. The big issue even compared Lynch to like literary giants.
I saw that.
Yeah.
And it's not just the comparisons.
Yeah.
They're saying it's emotionally intense.
Unsettling.
Deeply unsettling.
Mm.
Yeah, Ron Rash, he wrote, Serena, he said, it reveals how close we are to the precipice.
Wow.
Which I thought was a pretty powerful statement.
Yeah.
So what is this precipice we're teetering on?
Well, the book is set in a near-future Ireland where a crisis has just plunged the country into this state of emergency.
Okay. And the government has enacted something called the Emergency Powers Act?
Oh.
Yeah. And it's basically given them a blank check to do whatever they want.
Okay, so that's pretty standard dystopian fare so far.
Right.
So what makes this Emergency Powers Act different? I mean, what's the reality for people living under it?
Think about this. One of the characters, Larry Stack, he's a senior trade unionist. He's trying to organize teachers.
Okay.
Gets hauled in for interrogation just for that.
What?
Yeah. The government sees it as inciting hatred against the state.
Whoa, just for trying to advocate for teachers.
Yep.
That's making me a little nervous just thinking about it.
It's supposed to be unsettling. It's meant to make you think.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's just one example. I mean, the book really digs into how this act impacts ordinary lives.
Right.
And it really focuses on Eilish Speck,
Okay.
who is Larry's wife and their family.
Okay.
They're just trying to live their lives, raise their kids.
Right.
But this crisis, it just seeps into everything. So it's not just about the politics. It's about the human impact.
Exactly.
How these big forces affect these individual families.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how this would be unsettling, but it's interesting you say they're just trying to live their lives.
Yeah.
I'm curious what makes it so unsettling then.
Well, Lynch is a master at creating atmosphere.
Okay.
He focuses on these really small, telling details.
Okay, like what?
Like their daughter, Molly, she's developed this meticulous disinfecting routine.
What?
Yeah.
She's constantly wiping down surfaces, just consumed by this fear of germs.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It seems like a really subtle but powerful way to convey that kind of paranoia that would be gripping society. Right? It's not just about physical safety. It's about this creeping fear that just seeps into every aspect of life.
Mm-hmm. And then you have their son, Mark.
Okay.
He just wants things to go back to the way they were.
Right.
But it's clear that this new normal is anything but normal.
You can really feel the strain that this is putting on their family.
Right.
Like a crisis like this would just amplify any existing tension, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's like that saying, pressure reveals cracks.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, definitely. Things are about to get much worse.
Oh, no.
There's this growing resistance movement that's pushing back against the government.
Okay.
And Larry is right in the middle of it.
So it's not just about surviving now.
No.
It's about choosing sides,
Right.
taking a stand.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder what you would do in that situation.
That's what's so brilliant about this book. It forces you to confront these uncomfortable questions.
Yeah.
Like there's this constant undercurrent of dread, the sense that something terrible is about to happen.
You can feel the tension building.
Yeah.
But it's interesting you mentioned this resistance movement. Is it organized? Is it large scale? Or is it more about these small acts of defiance you were talking about?
That's part of the mystery. Lynch reveals things slowly, keeps you guessing. But what we do know is that things escalate quickly.
Oh.
There's this planned teachers' union march that's meant to be peaceful, but
Something goes wrong.
let's just say the government's response is anything but peaceful.
Oh, boy.
And this event becomes a real turning point for Eilish and her family.
Okay, now I'm really on the edge of my seat. I have to ask, how does Eilish react to all of this? Is she swept up in the resistance? Or is she more focused on protecting her family?
That's the dilemma she faces.
Right.
Does she prioritize her husband's activism or her children's safety?
Right.
And it's a choice with no easy answers.
That's what makes it so so relatable.
Yeah.
She's not some superhero. She's just a woman trying to make the best decision she can in an impossible situation.
Exactly.
So it sounds like Eilish is really caught between a rock and a hard place. And you mentioned Lynch reveals things slowly. I imagine that uncertainty surrounding the government's actions and motivations just really adds to that feeling of dread. Does the book offer any insights into what's driving the government, or is it intentionally ambiguous?
You know that ambiguity is one of the most effective things about this book,
Okay.
because it mirrors the way misinformation and propaganda work in the real world.
Right.
You're never quite sure who to believe, what's real and what's fabricated.
It's like the characters are living in this constant state of information overload,
Yeah.
bombarded with these conflicting narratives,
Mm-hmm.
which makes me wonder, how does this ambiguity affect the characters' relationships with each other? Are they able to trust each other?
Trust becomes a very fragile thing in this world.
Oh.
You see this especially with Eilish and Molly.
Yeah.
Molly's so consumed by fear that she starts to question everything, even her own mother's actions.
Wow, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
To have that fundamental bond of trust eroded by fear and suspicion, it sounds like Lynch is really exploring the psychological toll this kind of environment takes on people.
He's a master at capturing that inner turmoil.
Yeah.
And he does it through his writing style as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, his prose is incredibly evocative and unsettling. He uses these short, fragmented sentences. They create a sense of urgency and claustrophobia.
It's interesting you mention his writing style. I've noticed that Lynch doesn't shy away from depicting violence, but it's never gratuitous. It always feels purposeful, like it's meant to shock you into awareness.
You're right. He doesn't sugarcoat the brutality of this world,
Right.
but he also balances it with these moments of tenderness and beauty.
Okay.
There are these fleeting glimpses of humanity that shine through even in the darkest moments.
Could you give an example of one of those moments? I'm curious how he achieves that balance.
There's this scene where Eilish is walking along the canal after the crackdown,
Okay.
and she notices these snowdrops blooming.
Oh, wow.
It's such a small detail, but it speaks volumes.
Yeah, like a symbol of hope, of resilience. Life finding a way even amidst the ruins. That's a powerful image.
It is, and it speaks to the larger themes of the book.
Okay.
You know, it's not just about despair and oppression.
Right.
It's also about the enduring power of the human spirit. It's about finding ways to resist, to connect to love, even in the face of overwhelming darkness.
You mentioned earlier that the characters are bombarded with misinformation. Are there any specific examples of how this plays out in the book? I'm curious to know what kind of viral messages are spreading.
Well, there are rumors circulating about internment camps, whispers of disappearances, and conflicting reports about what really happened during the protest. It's a constant barrage of half-truths and outright lies.
It's like they're living in a world where reality itself is constantly shifting. How do the characters even begin to navigate that?
It's a struggle, and it's not just about deciphering the truth, it's also about figuring out who to trust. Because in this world, even those closest to you could be informants or collaborators.
That's a chilling thought.
Yeah.
It makes you question the very foundations of relationships.
Right.
And I imagine it makes it even harder for someone like Eilish, who's already dealing with so much.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity to her situation.
Yeah.
She's not only trying to protect her family from physical harm, she's also trying to shield them from the psychological manipulation that's happening all around them.
You mentioned earlier that there are other characters besides Eilish and her family. Can you tell us a little bit more about them? Do they play a significant role in the story?
They do. There's Carol Sexton, whose husband is also arrested.
Okay.
She and Eilish form a kind of bond, a shared understanding of what it means to lose someone you love to this oppressive regime.
It sounds like there's a sense of community, of solidarity that emerges even in the midst of this oppressive environment.
There is. And that's another one of the book's strengths.
Okay.
It shows how, even in the darkest of times, human connection can be a source of strength and hope.
It sounds like there's so much packed into this book. The political intrigue, the psychological suspense, the exploration of family dynamics, and then these glimmers of hope and resilience that peek through the cracks. It's making me want to go pick up a copy right now.
I highly recommend it. It's a book that will stay with you long after you finish it.
I have no doubt about that. But before we wrap up, I have to ask, where does the title Prophet Song come into play? What's prophetic about this story?
That's a question best left for the reader to discover.
Okay.
But I will say that the book offers a chillingly plausible vision of the future.
Okay.
It's a warning about what could happen if we allow fear and authoritarianism to take root.
It sounds like a book that's both timely and timeless.
Yeah.
It speaks to the anxieties of our current moment, but it also taps into these universal fears about the loss of freedom and the fragility of human connection.
Exactly. And it asks a crucial question. What are we willing to sacrifice in the name of safety and security?
That's a question we all need to be asking ourselves.
Right.
It feels like Prophet Song isn't just some futuristic fantasy. It's like a reflection of trends we're already seeing in the world today.
Yeah, that's what makes it so unsettling. I mean, it's not about spaceships and robots. It's
Right.
about the erosion of our basic freedoms, the creeping rise of surveillance, the way fear can be used to manipulate and control entire populations.
Makes you wonder, are there any specific historical parallels that Lynch is drawing on?
Absolutely. I mean, Ireland has a long history of political turmoil,
Right.
fighting for independence, resisting oppression.
Right.
And those echoes reverberate throughout the book.
Yeah, I can see that.
The internment camps, the disappearances, the silencing of dissent. These are all too familiar themes in Irish history.
It's like those wounds of the past are still festering beneath the surface, waiting to be reopened. And it makes me think about what you said earlier about the Emergency Powers Act. It's not just a fictional invention, is it?
No, not at all.
I mean, we've seen this play out in various forms throughout history.
Exactly. I mean, think about the Patriot Act in the United States after 9/11,
Right.
or the ways certain governments are using the pandemic as an excuse to crack down on dissent.
Right.
These are all examples of how power can be consolidated in the name of security and how quickly those measures can be abused.
And the book also highlights how those in power can exploit existing divisions within society to further their own agendas. This idea of inciting hatred against the state seems like a tactic straight out of the authoritarian playbook.
It is. And what's so insidious about it is that it preys on people's fears and insecurities. It creates this climate of suspicion where anyone who disagrees with the government is labeled an enemy of the people.
Which is exactly what we see happening to Larry. He's just trying to organize teachers, but he's painted as this dangerous radical who poses a threat to national security. It makes you wonder how people resist in this kind of environment.
That's one of the central questions of the book,
Oh.
Is it possible to fight back against a system that's so pervasive, so insidious?
Right.
And if so, what are the costs?
Yeah, I imagine those costs are pretty high, especially when you have a family to protect.
Right. Eilish is constantly weighing the risks and benefits of every decision she makes. Does she speak out and risk putting her family in danger?
Right.
Or does she stay silent and compromise her own values?
It's the no-win situation.
Uh-huh.
And it speaks to the moral complexities of living under an oppressive regime.
Yeah.
There are no easy answers, no clear-cut heroes and villains. Everyone is compromised in some way.
And that's what makes the book so thought-provoking. It forces us to confront these uncomfortable truths about ourselves.
Yeah.
What would we do in a similar situation? Would we be courageous enough to resist?
Right.
Or would we succumb to fear and self-preservation?
It's a reminder that the fight for freedom is never truly over. It's an ongoing struggle that requires vigilance, courage, and a willingness to stand up for what we believe in, even when it's difficult.
And it's a struggle that's playing out right now all over the world.
Yeah.
We're seeing a resurgence of authoritarianism, a rise in nationalism, a growing distrust of institutions. Prophet Song feels like a cautionary tale for our times.
It's a wake-up call, urging us to pay attention to the warning signs, to recognize the patterns of oppression before it's too late.
And it reminds us that the choices we make, even seemingly small ones, can have a ripple effect. That speaking out against injustice, even in a whisper, can make a difference.
Prophet Song is a book that will stay with you long after you finish it. It's a story that challenges us to think critically about the world around us, to question the narratives we're being fed, and to fight for the freedoms we hold dear.
It's a powerful and timely reminder that the future is not predetermined. It's something we create collectively through our actions, our choices, and our willingness to speak truth to power.
So if you're looking for a book that will challenge you, provoke you, and leave you thinking long after you've turned the last page, I highly recommend Prophet Song. It's a must-read for anyone who cares about the future of our world.
It's a song worth listening to.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Prophet Song. We hope it sparked your curiosity and inspired you to explore this important and timely book. Until next time, keep reading, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.